Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Endpoint Resilience is a proactive security strategy, a critical discussion with a special guest today from Forrester. So just to introduce ourselves, I will start. My name is Jason Short, and I am Vice President of Product Management here at Absolute. And I'm joined today by Chris Sherman, a Senior Security Analyst with Forrester. Hello, Chris. How are you today?
Great. Thank you, Jason, and hello to everyone on the line today. Yeah, again, my name's Chris Sherman, and I've been working as an industry analyst at Forrester for about 10 years now. And I focus mostly on endpoint security and some of the emerging areas like IoT security, medical device security, and quantum security. Let's advance here. And so for my piece here, I'm going to focus on some of the report findings, and Jason afterwards will talk through some of the Absolute's portfolio technologies, and we'll wrap up with a Q&A at the end. So, if you have questions throughout, make sure to put them in there in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end. And with that, I'll start with the first section here. We're going to talk today about a word that a lot of us have been hearing a lot recently, right? It's a word that's been coming up a lot this last year, and actually, in fact, I saw that very appropriately, it's now the official RSA conference theme for 2021. It's, of course, resilience, right? And resilience is defined by the capacity to recover quickly or, hold your form in the face of adversity. And to some, it's simply toughness, right? I like to think of it, though, as a state, right? One that can change over time based on any numbers of parameters or attributes. And depending on what you're measuring, right, it can change, right? For example, your resilience to getting infection is heavily dependent on the health of your immune system and all the, metrics like your white blood cell count, lymph node health, stuff like that. But perhaps maybe a more everyday example, let's take memory foam pillows, right? The product of NASA contracting in the 70s that, many of us use today. Memory foam is well known to be resilient to deformation, right? After removing your head, it always fills back out to its original shape. But we see examples of resilience, everywhere, right? In war, the military uses fuel cells that are resilient to attacks from projectiles with self-healing attributes that force punctures in the layered tank wall to instantly fill with rubber or polymer, right, that hardens within milliseconds. You can see here the first picture is from Armor Coat fuel tanks, and they build so-called self-healing fuel cells for mostly military vehicles. And you can see a time-lapse photo set right below that shows a bullet entering a tank wall with the entrance hole instantly filling with a polymer once a bullet passes. And this is a good example of product resilience. But then we have example here of biological resilience down below with a dandelion growing out of the pavement. This is just a stock photo, but I could have used so many examples here to show things like, the extremophile bacteria that survive space, or, single-cell organisms that survive near a thermal vent in the ocean, right? These are quite extreme examples of biological resilience. Even in the face of adversity, biology has just an astonishing array of survival techniques and attributes that keep life, going. But what about personal resilience? We're biologically resilient in many ways, but what about the day-to-day life tasks that we all have and need to keep our households going, our loved ones healthy, and our work tasks completed on time and of the highest quality. Balancing these all while staying mentally healthy and fit, and productive can be pretty difficult in normal times, but with so many people's personal and work lives clashing this last year for the first time in a big way for many of us, right? It's definitely been difficult, to say the least. Most of us have responsibilities that extend far beyond work. I'm sure many of us today on the phone, including myself, have had loved ones and family members in the hospital, right? And we've had to, spend more time torn between work and personal stressors, right? But one thing I keep hearing from our clients, productivity hasn't waned. In fact, many companies have told us that they've seen increases in employee productivity over the last year. Employees are people with their own attributes and that contribute to their overall resiliency in the face of things like a global pandemic and the demands of just everyday life. But while there are clearly just an uncountable number of personal sacrifices being made today, this all points to the incredible resiliency office and non-office workers have shown during this pandemic. But what about their devices? Have endpoint devices used by these employees shown the same level of resilience to adversity and change as the employees themselves? Do organizations even have a way to determine this, right? This is exactly what Forrester Consulting and Absolute teamed up to investigate through a survey researching about 157 enterprise buyers. And through this collaboration, we looked at the challenges and benefits of maintaining resilience, right? We looked specifically at how endpoint security agent status, endpoint configuration, just overall risk related to endpoint resilience, or really a lack thereof in many cases, right? What does this mean for the enterprise? And we covered several industries with consumer at 15% here, and technology companies, at 12. Those are the top two. A slight majority had over 1,000 employees, or about 51%. The rest being under 1,000 employees. And while the paper itself is available on Absolute's website, and we'll provide a link later, I encourage all of you to check it out, afterwards if you haven't already. So today I'm going to sum up some of the key findings, together with Forrester's own research that aren't in the paper. All right, so let's jump right in. All right, so it's clear cyber attacks have become a top concern, for organizational leadership, all the way to the board. From our conversations with clients, and our annual survey data, we see security getting more and more attention at the board and the C level, right? And at this level, data protection is a top concern, right? Especially as pressure just mounts, right, to protect consumer data. And things like in the face of evolving privacy regulations and just the increasing power of data protection authorities, right? But overall, this is, data security has been a major issue during the pandemic, especially due to the increasing use of unmanaged devices that are accessing sensitive, PII and corporate data. And actually, according to Absolute, there's been a 116% increase in PII on corporate endpoints since the pandemic started. And another top concern among security leaders is the overall expanding attack surface that's made up of more employee endpoint devices, IoT devices, mobile devices, right? It's this sheer number of devices that are entering enterprise networks that's really causing a lot of consternation with security professionals, right? Both unmanaged and managed devices. And this was definitely the case before the pandemic, but it certainly remains the case today. Increases in remote work, has kept business operations afloat and, helped contribute to business resiliency. And according to Forrester's survey data, many employees are actually expected to continue working from home long after the pandemic is over. And this all just complicates the job of security professionals that are trying to identify and mitigate these risks that are associated with the overall expanding attack surface of their organization. And actually, 38% of organizations, based on our research with Absolute, have no way to, or only 38% can determine ROI, right, can actively track their organization's, return on investment, right, for their endpoint security investments. This probably doesn't come as much of a surprise to many of you on the line, especially those who, have relied on endpoint security technologies, throughout the pandemic that have a on-premise server requirement, right? These endpoint security agent connections and, the overall health of these agents, isn't always, clear or reliable, right? And this situation is just made even worse when organizations lack the visibility, into the endpoints to identify misconfigurations, or deviations from a safe baseline. And really, ultimately, security leaders need to, need measurable investments, right? This is the main point here. But, as I mentioned, the attack surface really has a lot to do with these challenges.